I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, September the 27th, brought to you in part by Witex Corporation, providing excellence in animal health, including all-American identification tags of any kind for all classes of livestock. For more information, go to y-tex.com. The recession, everybody's talking about the recession. You think, well, what is a recession? Well, the historical definition for recession was 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Well, this year in 2022, our first quarter GDP had a negative 1.6% growth. Our second quarter had a negative 0.6% growth. So we've been in a recession here for the last few months, but they're not calling it a recession. And why is that? Well, the Democrats control mainstream media, and they decided that they don't want to call it a recession because they're sympathetic to the Biden administration. Well, now we're getting in close to getting the results of our third consecutive quarter, and it's not looking good either. Will it be a recession then? Well, one reason that they're saying they haven't called it a recession is because unemployment is down. Well, why is unemployment down? Well, most of our liberal havens are now marijuana legal, and whether that was for pleasure or for medicinal use. I learned a little bit about the medicinal use this past weekend. I was in Oklahoma talking to some people that lived over there. When they made it legal for medicinal use in Oklahoma, they just set up tents everywhere and just wrote everybody out prescription to get dope. Well, those people, what does marijuana do? It steals your ambition for the most part. So most of those people are just content laying around in public parks and on the sidewalk, just defecating, right off the edge of the curb there, and doing drugs all day or drinking and not doing anything. They don't want a job. The worst thing that could happen to them is somebody come along and offer them a job that they had to show up to every day, and they would have to be, people that, contribute to society. Well, none of those people want to do that. They're not filing for unemployment. They don't want a job. Unemployment is down. But you can't eat in restaurants, and it's not just a few places. It's almost everywhere you go. I'm in California right now doing several speaking engagements for Beringer Ingelheim and talking to people there. Most of their restaurants are closed on Mondays because they can't keep enough staff in to work in those places. And it's not that the people aren't there. The people don't want to work. They got spoiled during the pandemic, getting free money and free rent. They don't want to go back to working. And I don't know how they keep doing that. I get behind 1 month or forget to pay my gas bill 1 month, and they're sending a collection agency after me. How do these people just go with no source of income and no apparent way to be making a living? But they just continue to get by somehow or another, begging on street corners or what have you. But that's the only reason that we're not in full-blown recession, is because nobody said that we're in full-blown recession. Well, we're in a recession, guys. I mean, you can tell it everywhere. How's that going to affect the cattle market? Well, I don't know that it's going to hurt it that bad. The people that want to, and how do people eat beef? It's whenever they're celebrating, whenever they're enjoying time with their families. People are still going to do that. Now, they may decide to pick a cheaper cut of meat, maybe. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. I think that beef is going to stave off most of the pressure from a recession because it's simple supply and demand. We've got excellent demand domestically. It may start to wane off a little bit, but for export, we've got excellent demand. If the recession does hurt the value of our dollar, that's going to help the sales to export countries to send our product. And we're just going to be running into a period of time where our supplies are going to be extremely, extremely tight. And people are still going to eat every day. They may not eat as good as they are, but it doesn't mean that they're going to turn to chicken or pork, and they're still going to eat meat. Those people that still eat meat, which is still the majority of people. But I tell you what's hurting your cattle market and what's keeping it from really taking off more than anything is continued sustained drought. And we're in bad shape, guys, in the Southern Plains. Especially southern Oklahoma, places like that, southern Kansas, southwest Kansas. I tell you what, I always talk about how dry we are in the Texas Panhandle. We actually got a little bit more timely of rains when the rains came right there around Labor Day than some of those other places. Now you go over into central Texas, that was horrible dry all summer long, and they sold off probably 30% of their cows. Well, they got big rains during there, but it all come at once, and then they haven't had anything since. But we're not going to have any wheat. We thought we had this excellent chance to get some fall grazing on wheat pasture. It's not looking good now. A lot of the wheat's got a little bit of stand to it, but it's turning really faint. And it's not going to go on, guys, and it's not going to root down if we don't get some moisture sometime in the Southern Plains. In Oklahoma City on Monday, your light steer calves were $10 to $15 lower. And that shouldn't be happening this time of year. If we would happen to get a pretty decent rain around some of that wheat country, they could easily be $20 to $30 higher. But it's just holding things back. Of course, your board's not helping. Your board's just so sensitive to everything in the news and everything, with our economy and everything like that, is holding it back a little bit. But I tell you what, it all pales in comparison to supply and demand. Whenever we get supplies that are so tight, we're still going to have excellent export demand. We're still going to have really, really decent domestic demand, and I think we're probably going to be all right. Talking about your economy, over the weekend I worked the Heritage Place quarter horse race sales in Oklahoma City for DV auction, and people are saying that the economy is no good. I sat and watched two yearling quarter horse maybes, hopefuls, sell for over $500,000 a piece. And I tell you what, they would have to be pretty much dogs not to bring 20 or 30,000 at least. It was unbelievable. Of course, a lot of those horses are bought by nationals, and how they have so much money, I think you and I both know, but that's where the money was coming from. But sure didn't see the economy hurting at all there. I'm out in California this week, going to be giving a presentation at Chico State University to some of your young ag students and some producers there, and then going to be going on later this week to Alturas, California, and up in Klamath Falls, Oregon with Beringer Ingelheim, and really looking forward to those. Talk about your board. On Monday to start the week, October live cattle futures were down 77 cents, mostly on economic news, at 143.47. December was down $1.20 at 147.35. Your back months on your live cattle futures down 97 to down $1.70. Feeder cattle were down harder than that, and I don't believe much of that pressure came from the cattle on feed report that could have been called slightly bearish. I think people mostly already forgot about that. But September feeder cattle contracts down $1.25 at 176.87. October down 127 at 177.07. Back months on feeder cattle down 120 to down 240. Corn futures down 2.5 cents a bushel at 666 1/4. Beans were down. November contract was down 14.5 cents a bushel at 14.11 1/4 cent for your new crop beans there. And same reason on those was just economic news and more talk about recession. And like I said, we're not in a recession until somebody says we're in a recession. I think we've probably been in a recession. I guess when mainstream media finally tells us that we are in one, then we're going to be in one, because your historical definition did not might put us in one evidently. But you talk about the weighted average on last week's negotiated fed cattle trade in your 5-area feeding region. Pure negotiated sales, 97,700 head. That's the biggest week we've had for a long time. Why was it big in your negotiated sales? Because our market was higher. Why was the market higher? Because we had more negotiated sales. It's the same thing, guys. That 97,700 in your 5-area feeding region compares to 59,400 head a week ago and 54,100 head the same week a year ago. Live sales, steers and heifers were $1.50 to $2 higher, from 142 to 148.5 in your 5-area feeding region. We only had 368 head at the 142. We had about 350 head at the 148.5. Your bulk of trade is in there somewhere in the middle. But your live steers had a weighted average of 144.94. That gained quite a bit of ground from what I told you up through Thursday on our last visit, because Friday we had higher sales. That weighted average was $1.75 higher than the previous week's steer weighted average. That's pretty significant gains, but mostly in the northern plains, steers sold from 144 to 148, which was steady to $2 higher. Southern plains, they all sold at 143, which was $1 higher. Dress sales were $4 higher in your 5-area feeding region, from 226 to 234. We only had 178 head at 226, or excuse me, 778 head at 226. Only had 726 head at the 234. The bulk of the sales dress were from 228 to 232, but your weighted average on dress steers was 228.99. That was up $2.15 from the previous week's weighted average. And that's pretty good gains right there, guys. And it brought about a lot of negotiated trade. Nationwide, we had 116,500 head pure negotiated trade. We haven't seen that in a long, long time. About 34% of those are about typical, or for 15 to 30-day delivery. Negotiated grid sales totaled 51,000 nationwide. Forward contract totaled 28,800 head. And if you don't see the problem, why I say we need to preserve what negotiated trade we have, your formula sales last week, 281,800 head. Box beef cutout values were mixed. Choice cuts were lower on Monday afternoon, down 79 cents, 247.84. Selects were up 404 at 223.35. Talk about what else is going on. Beaver County stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma, that's up in the no man's land, the Texas or the Oklahoma Panhandle on the eastern side. They've got a good sale, 4,500 head here for the regular sale on Tuesday. Talked to Jeff Slatton. I said, how do you keep these good runs going? You're in the middle of nowhere, but it's not really that far to anywhere. And that's what we talked about. I mean, he's sitting right in between your Texas and Kansas feedlot areas, not very far to Amarillo, not very far to Oklahoma City, not very far to Dodge City, not very far to Greeley, actually. And he says, we take care of our customers here. We don't allow any trading cattle, and we're gaining new customers all the time. So they're doing a good job there at Beaver County Stockyards. Said they're going to have 1,300 yearlings. Be sure 30 loads, 30 straight loads of yearlings. Got a bunch of fancy strings of calves coming in, some long strings. Said he's got 2 or 3 consignments of some of the fanciest red Angus calves you've ever seen. And I said, surely they didn't bring in the replacement quality heifers. And he said, yes, they're here too. So if you guys want to get some of those fancy heifer calves to keep back for replacements, they're going to have them at Beaver County Stockyards here on Tuesday. Next week, they've got 6,000 head expected. They're getting all the cattle off the T. Boone Pickens Ranch over there close to Perryton. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Monday sitting at 176.35. That was down 94 cents. And our markets were lower to start off the week. Oklahoma City was quite a bit lower, 7,100 head. Feeder steers were mostly steady, but spots $3 to $6 lower, especially on 6-weight steers, feeder steers, and on the few 8-weight steers that they had. Feeder heifers were $2 to $6 lower. Calves, like I told you, $10 to $15 lower. Had a lot of balling calves there. People don't have any place to keep cattle and they can't afford supplemental feed to get them weaned, so they're bringing them to town. And like I said, if we could get a decent rain over that hard red winter wheat country, they could just be tens of dollars higher, but we got to get a rain. Talk about Joplin Regional Stockyards, 5,900 head there, $2 to $8 lower, but lightweight steer calves in Joplin $9 to $15 lower. You think surely it's not dry up there in southwest Oklahoma? It is. It's dry. And there's not a lot of wheat pasture up there going up in the northern parts of Oklahoma that way. Just no place to put these calves. And the feedlots are fairly full. They got lighter cattle in them. But, not much demand for these unless we get some fall grazing. Talk about your Zoetis stick-out sale of the day. It was Tina Livestock in Tina, Missouri. Very rural auction market in northwest Missouri there, guys. And they had some really impressive quotes here. I'm showing you 3 of these quotes here. They may not be in order, but Scott Jensen from Higginsville, Missouri, sold 63 head of steers, weighed 759 at 186.10. Brum Farms from St. Joe, Missouri, used to sell at St. Joe Stockyards. I watched them for years and years. Sold 104 head of steers. These were bought and backgrounded steers, but top quality. Weighed 678 at 199 1/4. And then Adam Griffin from Carrollton, Missouri, sold 85 steers, weighed 618 at 206.75. Going to give you several individual quotes. Talk about Bighorn Basin Livestock Auction, Worland, Wyoming, 72 head of light steer calves, weighed 470 pounds at 229 1/4. I don't think we've ever talked about that sale barn before. Another one way out east that we rarely talk about unless they're having one of their tele-auctions, Tri-State Livestock Market from Abington, Virginia. They sold 58 steers on Monday, weighed 869 at 173.75. Sioux Falls Regional Livestock Market in Worthing, South Dakota, sold 54 head of steers, weighed 513 at 225. But the best quote that I saw anywhere on Monday, your Macrison No BS top quote for the day, come out of Callaway Livestock Center in Kingdom City, Missouri. My buddy Jack Harrison sold 60 steers, weighed 808 at 184.75. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.